Hi, I'm Marty Levinston, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
For the identity of the real Marty Levinson, please stay tuned for the Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Back to that lemon light city, sweet home Chicago. 2 is 4, 4 4 6. Come on, baby, now get your business fixed. Come on, honey, don't you wanna go back to the lemon light?
Hi there, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the web at www.ntnm.org, Community Policing Caps24.org. We'll be talking a lot about community policing and National Night Out with our next guest. Jewish Chicago will be out for your early voting pleasure in the middle of April. There'll be a complete review of the judicial race and all the various political races, and a probably all too lengthy review of the presidential situation and what to do if you feel like jumping off a cliff. Anyway, that's another story. Anyhow, it is a pleasure to reintroduce you. You probably know him already from watching the show. The former deputy chief of the Chicago Police Department, who was on the show in that role, as well as somebody who was commander of the 24th District, a captain beforehand somewhere else, community policing sergeant in the 24th District, and presently he's a professor of criminal justice in the city college system, and all around bon vivant and gadfly. No, not really. And we're talking about Deputy Chief Bruce Rottner. How you doing?
Great, Avi. Thanks for having me.
First of all, thank you. And you know what? There's so much to talk about other than National Night Out, but National Night Out is really important. And it is something that it's, by the way, apparently every district is at least having a National Night Out this year. The 24th District is the only one to have 9 individual events. And I used to stand up strong for our own individual event in 2412, where I'm the beat facilitator, but the more I see people come mostly for the raffle prizes, the more I wouldn't mind a whole neighborhood thing. So you were around the beginning of National Nights Out in Chicago. Not to mention you were the founding force in the 24th District of community policing when the whole concept first began.
Well, you know, I wasn't the founder, but I was here when the 24th District went into community policing. We were one of 5 prototype districts back in 1993, and I was the community policing sergeant back at that time. We called it neighborhood relations. But National Night Out actually started in 1984, and it's always held on the first Tuesday in August, with the exception of Florida and Texas, because it's too hot there during those times. So they have theirs in October. But be that as it may, it originally started as a concept where people just sat out on their front porches, turned on their porch lights, and it was a symbolic gesture, so to speak, that, we're anti-crime, we support the police, our presence out here shows that. Since that time, it's expanded considerably, as you well know, to people having events, people doing marches, people having cookouts, things like that. And as you said, every district in Chicago is having at least some National Night Out event. I always like to think that the 24th District was kind of far and above a lot of these districts because we were so well organized
We
here.
still are, and in part thanks to our roots, because a lot of the same people running the beats when you were there are still the same people running the beats today.
Right, and we were always so grateful to those people, and people like you and Sonny who hung in there with us, who really believed in what we were doing and are still doing it. I know that things have changed since I left 5 years ago, and things started to change even when I was still on the police department. But be that as it may, people who are involved in crime prevention are always involved in crime prevention. And study after study has shown that communities who are actively involved in crime prevention actually contribute to the reduction of crime in their community. So there's no magic woof and puff dust. There's no magic wand to make crime go away. It's hard work. It's hard work on the part of the police, and it's hard work on the part of the community. And I truly, truly believe that, And you know what? So do a lot of people in the community, and so do a lot of police officers.
Despite the recent uptick in shootings, the fact of the matter is that crime is down significantly over the time the community policing program has been in place. And I remember I took over my beat totally in 1995. I was involved beforehand through the Northtown Community Council. So, we'd go to the meetings, and there'd be a number of corners where drug dealing was very common, with even competing factions.
Sure.
The black gang on the east side of the street, the Hispanic gang on the left side of the street,
Sure.
and on the west side rather. And now it's still there in part, but at a minimum, it's much less. The number of crimes are less. The number of incidents are less. The people that know to call 911 is even more important. And even if the latest court decision makes it more frustrating than ever, for the police to be able to do their job properly, the fact of the matter is that when you call 911 and the police are at least out there and keep tabs on a situation, it helps them identify who the bad guys are. And once they know who the bad guys are, they can keep an eye out.
Well, I think that we as a people, as an American people, have to understand that what goes on, especially today, is kind of the price we pay for democracy. We can't have our cake and eat it too. We can't expect our officers to go out there and aggressively patrol, aggressively attack crime problems, and then be questioned as to everything they do. You can't have it both ways. We always used to say, what people would like in their minds, and obviously not all people, but a lot of people, like in little third world countries where a van pulls up, they take the bad guys, throw in the van, they're never seen again, People would like that, we'd like to make all the bad guys just go away, and we want the police to do it. But the reality is, they say, but you can't do that in America, You can't violate their Fourth Amendment rights, their second, constitutional rights. So it makes it very frustrating on the part of the police, because we know that most people are good, decent, honest, and are behind us.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
That's true.
That's the reality. But we also know that there are those groups out there that strictly rely on police making mistakes, which we do every day. Why? Because we're human. And
yeah,
then,
that is a problem.
And then, turning around and suing us. The media jumps on the bad stories, not the good stories, So it's very difficult to be a police officer today. It's a difficult time.
It's very difficult. One thing, I always make the point, I do not watch television news. And there is one exception, and that's Tracy Butler. But, she doesn't do news. And she's been a guest on the show and in the top 10 of most viewed shows ever. And I wish she'd come back on the show, but she's got two daughters who are growing up in crazy hours, so I don't blame her. Although we still are in touch, and she's a nice person. But getting back to the crime issue, having run the community, having chaired the meetings, people who watch the news, the people on the news, and I'll tell you as from a journalistic standpoint, most of those faces are at best subpar journalists. Many are just pretty faces reading a sheet of paper that don't understand what's going on. You don't usually find people that are in the 1% of beauty or plastic surgery beneficiaries to be among the best reporters consistently throughout the course of time, or to be able to understand things. They have to be able to make people kind of laugh or smile or cry, but It's more of an acting skill. These people really don't know what they're reading, and when you watch this stuff on TV, an average newspaper story, let's say a column, whether it's John Cass's column or Mary Schmidt, the recent Pulitzer Prize winners column in the Tribune, or Neil Steinberg in the Sun-Times or whoever, about 900 words. If you were to take those 900 words and read them on the air, it would take you 6 minutes to do that. There is nothing that lasts 6 minutes on a TV news show except maybe a commercial break.
Right. And Avi, all we ever asked, and when I say we, as police officers, was for the media to be fair. I mean, Annie Sweeney from the Tribune, Bernie Tafoya from WBBM, John Cody, who just recently retired, all tremendously fair people. Don't take sides, and we realize they have a job to do. And we thank God in this country we have a free media, because as we know in other countries, they don't. And all we're asking for is a fair shake here, We understand that, there's a profit motive today in media. People
big profit motive.
Absolutely.
And it's more entertainment
absolutely.
than news. By the way, I want to add one name. You're talking about experienced journalists. And
sure.
At least with WBBM radio, people are able to expand on what they're able to say and cover and all the rest of it. But there's a guy in Evanston, Bob Seidenberg, who covers a lot of the police stuff there, who's really an outstanding reporter and very fair. And, when I see the level of pro and con comments he gets, you know what? Everybody's going to get con comments if you're in a newspaper. You ought to see my hate mail from Jewish Chicago. But, the guy's really good. But you're not talking about the majority of reporters. The majority, people sway with the wind.
Sure.
These people sometimes, even though they should be experienced journalists who objectively look at facts, when the tide goes a certain way on a particular issue, you see these guys blowing. They might be some of the last guys to blow that way on the wind. May take them longer to bend than the other ones, but they'll usually bend with the crowd. That will happen. But when I saw some of the recent controversies about the Laquan McDonald thing, some guys kind of were adamant and stood strong for certain things and certain people, but near the end, they got blown away by a tidal wave.
Sure.
And, it's a shame that way. A lot of times when I start, and I know you're not a big fan of the news either, the television news, but, I do get to see some things on Facebook because, I'm kind of picky about, I shouldn't say I'm picky about the contacts I get. I'll give anybody a chance unless they're from Nigeria and have no common friends and are looking to sell me an oil well. That's a different story.
You mean those things aren't real?
But you know what? I like to have friends on the right. I like to have friends on the left. I want friends from
sure,
Republican, Democrat,
variety,
Libertarian, Green Party. I like to see what they're saying, what they're promoting. A lot of times it's the leaders. And some of the stuff is unbelievable. There was a lady who came to a national panel from Chicago. And I just caught this one this morning. And she basically called, a black woman, she called for the disbandment of the Chicago Police Department. It was like, huh? Because they are doing bad and a murder's a serious thing, so we need to sit back and think about things, and then we ought to have some kind of community initiative come up. Now, not to mention the fact that just a few seconds without a police force, if people know about it in advance, would not be a very good thing. It's like, I get the impression that and I see some of these demonstrations, against the police these days from these various groups, and I could name names, and you know exactly what name I want to name, but I'm going to be nice about that. We're now nicer than they are with their protesters who started them off. I almost get the feeling that, it's the gangster disciples and the Latin kings and the gangs and the bad guys that are leading these demonstrations. handcuff the police so they can get away with whatever crimes they want.
Well, I don't know about that. I would.
No, I'm not saying that it is.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if they weren't participating.
Because I mean, it wouldn't be in their own self-interest. They're interested in making money and selling drugs. That's the bottom line. One of the issues today, and you've heard this before. In the old days, and I don't like to digress back to the old days because most people don't find them really interesting anyways.
I do.
But you have to learn from the old days.
Exactly.
When you had huge gangs, and you had Jeff Fort, and you had structure in gangs, they basically ran their gangs like the mafia, like a military operation. The problem is today that there's no gang leadership. So you may have, the gangster disciples, but you can have 80, 90 factions of the gangster disciples, all fighting for blocks and blocks of territory and things like that, and that's one of the issues that we face. The superintendent and the department has identified, I believe, 1,300 prime people that are causing probably 80% of the violence, Now, we're targeting those people. Unfortunately, it's not illegal to belong to a gang. And unfortunately, you can't just go up to one of these 1,300 and say, you're on our list, you're coming with us, Again, this is America. We don't do that,
Right.
But they're going to do something wrong eventually because they made it to that list, So I think that Superintendent Johnson and his staff are on the right track doing this, But with everything that's going on recently, and has sprung up again recently, police officers are sometimes a little bit hesitant to make as many aggressive stops as they did.
And
you can't blame them.
You can't blame them at all. Well, newspapers I still read, and that's always been my primary source of news. And there was a fellow, actually, who used to write for me, who I thought was the best writer when Jewish Chicago was a paid paper, and that's Ron Greenberg, who writes for the Tribune, who actually is a Jewish guy, older than both of us, by the way, who grew up in Albany Park. And he was writing about the problem today. John Cass wasn't there, and he was on page 2, which a lot of times his column isn't, deservedly, because he's really a very thoughtful writer and brings out very good points. And one of his primary points today was, good, bad, ugly, whatever, the police still are running toward gunfire during situations. It's like they're not running away. They're running toward, who else is going to stop that gunfire?
Sure. I think that, the superintendent and some of the top command of the police department, every day they're looking at different strategies. They've kind of brought back recently what we used to call the summer mobile force. And that was because of all the problems they were having at the beginning of the summer on the beaches, which we never really had in the past, but you saw kind of the tail end of it last year. And this is where a ton of people go to enjoy themselves, who can't afford to belong to a club or can't afford, and it's a nice free day for them and their families. And these knuckleheads have taken over the beaches. So the superintendent, again, formed a summer mobile. And anytime you take a large group of police officers and put them in a small area, you're going to reduce problems. I mean, it's obvious. Phil Klein, who was superintendent back in the early 2000s.
And my favorite superintendent of all time.
I mean, it didn't take...
Who I hope will be on the show again this year talking about the Chicago Police Memorial Foundation.
Well, it didn't take Superintendent Klein too long to figure out that if you took 30 or 40 policemen and put them in a 3 or 4 block area, you're going to reduce shootings. And it was very successful, Now, McCarthy came in and disbanded all that, I didn't agree with it, but I was kind of on my way out, so I really had nothing to say about it. His emphasis was putting people back in the districts, But we lost that fast, rapid force of officers who were able to move into a neighborhood where there were shootings, where there were problems. I would like to see that come back.
Same here.
I would like to see it come back, controlled, perhaps a little better supervised. But there's a lot of great police officers out there, who really can make a difference, if you just let them know that, we, and when I say we, the police department administration has their back. It's easy for people to say, go out there, officers, and do this, that, and the end. And then when officers are served with subpoenas to go to federal court or being sued, they turn around, there's no one there for them, And that's why a lot of officers are kind of like, they're doing their job, but with the idea that, I better not do it too much more aggressively because I'm going to wind up getting sued and no one's going to be there for me.
And you know what? That's not a good situation because that's when you're not going to be doing, if you take a look at baseball, if you're somewhat hesitant, your batting average is going from 280 to 230.
Sure.
And, that's something I can quantify statistically. And unfortunately, in terms of protecting the community, the same sort of situation is through, where you go from above average to doing a heck of a job to all of a sudden being mediocre and hesitant at the plate. And you can't blame these guys because somebody who tries to do the right thing, who takes a misstep or gets involved in an unfortunate situation. And you know what? I'm not saying that the policeman didn't exercise the best judgment in every single one of these cases, but in some of these cases, these guys were attacked by thugs and were defending themselves.
Well, let's look at the broader stream here,
Yeah.
because the shootings, actually are far and few in between.
Correct.
It's the day-to-day decisions that police officers have to make that they only have seconds to make, only seconds.
Yep,
and the rest of us have hours and days and weeks and months to look at those decisions and criticize them or support them, we hope, But the officer on the street every day is making decisions based on his or her training, based on his or her experience. And, and you just go home every day and go, I hope I made the right decision, I hope tomorrow I'm not called in and said, well, why did you do this? Well, you weren't there, boss. I had to make a decision. And that's what we pay these people to do, to make good decisions. Are they going to screw up? Absolutely. But again, like I always say, the problem is we have to recruit from the human race, And that's the bottom line.
You put a person in a situation, you have to be cognizant of what the reality of the situation is.
Sure.
One of the things that really was severely underpublicized is as almost anything that makes sense in this world is underpublicized. Anita Alvarez had a special session with reporters that lasted about an hour that can be found on the web. Of course, it's not going to help her in the election anymore, even though I thought that it's obvious, everybody knows I thought she was the standout best person in that race. But what she did is, after the Laquan McDonald situation was going, she invited a group of the reporters, a large group of reporters, and she showed them film of another shooting. And it was something people weren't aware of, and she asked them to make the calls about what was going to happen. Did a guy show his gun or not?
I saw that piece. Yes. And something, we've taken media people through training simulators, and we have some really good training simulators now. 3D high tech type of things. And nobody will come out there not agreeing that you have a really, really tough job. But media people have their job to do too. We understand that. But getting back to what we were talking about initially, National Night Out. I think if you go anywhere over the city, you'll see literally hundreds, thousands of people out there, and these people basically are supporting crime prevention and supporting the police.
The vast majority of people very much support you guys.
Absolutely, no question about it. So, whenever we talk to the younger officers...
But here's the problem. It doesn't take a lot of people on the other side. The Russian Revolution was fomented by 25,000 communists. Less than 15% of Germany considered themselves Nazis when Hitler was taking power.
And we understand all that, Avi, but my only point is that police generally know, especially in communities like this, that people are behind them. Police know that most people don't really think about the police all the time. I did because I was a policeman for 40 years, But I know the guy who lived down the street from me who sold shoes for a living, he didn't think about the police all the time. The only time he ever thought about the police is when he got a ticket or he was a victim of crime, you know. So generally, you know, nobody was mad at us, nobody was angry at us or anything like that. And when I was in command up here, you know, I really, really tried to stress that, you know, that these people, you know, are your friends. I mean, they're your friends, you know. And most police officers caught on to that. They understood that, you know. Whether they actually articulated that or not, you know, it's tough when you're in this real masculine society to say that, you know. You know, we don't patch each other on the behind like they do, and you get sued, you know. But
you know, I see that in baseball players. I want to
barf. but anyways, so like I say, when you see National Night Out this coming August, and see all those people out there doing these things, you know, it's going to be a beautiful thing. It really is, and it's kind of a back to basics strategy, and that's something that we really need to build on. You know, not just in this community, in every community.
No, I think that's very important. And Sonny's event's going to be at Greenbrier Park on Tuesday, August 2nd, 6 p.m., Sonny? 6 to 8 at Greenbrier Park, which is at Peterson and Washtenaw. And if you'd like to come a little early and help them out, please do. There'll be raffles, prizes, all the rest of that good stuff. Mine will be at Warren Park, Tuesday, August 2nd, from 6 to 7:30. If you want to come half an hour early and help me set up, that'd be great. If you go on the 24th District has a Facebook page that starts 024 because that's the official police way to do things. So you can search them out on Facebook, or you can email them. Well, first of all, Sonny's got a website, caps24.org, but you can also get the Chicago Police Department, and I think it's caps24 at chicagopolice.org. Is that the ending of the Chicago Police thing? Chicago
yes.
Police? Okay, thank you. So caps24 at chicagopolice.org if you'd like to find out where it is in your neighborhood. In the meantime, tell us about, we've got 2 minutes left. What's been going on with you personally?
Well, I'm a new grandfather.
Masato.
Grandfather. We have a grandson, our first grandchild, and everybody tells you how terrific it is, and you understand that intellectually, as I was saying to Sonny, but until you have that little baby in your arms, you know, there's nothing like it. It really isn't. My Mather class of 1966, folks, Mather, 1966, we are having a 51st reunion next year.
Cool.
May 6th at Ravinia Green Country Club. So look for a Facebook page within the next month, okay? Little plug for that. And I'm teaching at the city colleges, criminal justice courses, and just doing a lot of things. So we're staying very busy.
And also taking really good pictures on Facebook.
Well, I enjoy doing that. I really do.
You know, it's funny. I ran into a friend of mine from grammar school that I hadn't seen since, you know, our school days. And we were talking to each other. We still recognized each other, which actually I was pleased both of us greatly.
Sure.
And he, you know, we started talking, and he was talking about being a grandparent. And he was talking about how fantastic it is to be a grandfather and how much he loves those kids. And then he said, you know, those kids are so wonderful. It almost made raising 5 kids worth it.
Well, they are wonderful. They really are. And, you know, we're really blessed. So,
yeah, by the way, that's R.E.A. Naaman for those of you who would know who that is. Anyway, in the meantime, I want to thank you very much for enlightening us on CAPS and a little bit more about the present situation. You know, by the way, when you were talking about, you know, like in third world countries, how some people just drive up and all that, I was actually thinking I'd like to see that happen to City Hall. That's another story. Oh, and by the way, next week, speaking of people that drive up and whisk you off, we're going to have guys from the Lost Boys of Darfur coming on to talk.
Oh, very interesting.
So these guys are very interesting.
We'll look forward to that, Avi.
Definitely. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you,
Deputy
Avi.
Chief Bruce Rottner. Thanks to my entire technical crew, Sonny Hirsch. Stay tuned next week when we'll have guys from the Lost Boys of Darfur, Bill Morton from the Rogers Park Chamber, and Diane Shapiro, who's running for clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.